It doesn't mention his name. Oh, didn't it say anywhere on it?
It doesn't list anyone's name.
Oh, okay. And you went to the visitor center.
Well, I'm going to get ahead of the game here. I like to bring a little gift for everybody here. It's too bad I couldn't actually bring the beer that goes with it. But I brought some McDonald's koozies. Just pass that around. Good things. Pass them out.
Here.
You're not going to see too many of these floating around town here. Everybody on this side get one? Outside of Pennsylvania, you can put a pop or a soda in here.
Hey, Tom. Hi. Where'd you go? Oh, the Delligatti? That's the seats right back there. Okay.
Anybody not get one?
Hi. Helen, get your beer koozie.
Did you bring the beer?
Yeah. Dan's getting the beer later.
Nope, I just my purse there.
It's not.
Just a minute or two, and then
Wish you were
just want to welcome everybody here tonight to the last of our spring speaker series. We're busy planning now the fall speaker series. So when you get your next newsletter in July, we hope to have those speakers in place. And I think once we have in mind, I think you'll all be real interested in attending and hearing. Tonight we're pleased to have Dan Delligatti with us from McDonald's. Dan is currently celebrating his 39th year with McDonald's. He is currently a McDonald's owner, operator in the Pittsburgh region. His family has been in the business since 1957, and the restaurants that they own and operate are in southwestern Pennsylvania. He is the third generation owner-operator and opened his first restaurant in 1989. Dan, along with his wife and his 3 children, are all Pennsylvania State University graduates. Dan graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Management, while his wife graduated in Architectural Engineering. His son has recently become the first fourth generation McDonald's owner and operator. And I had the pleasure of meeting Nick here just last spring. Dan Delligatti's first job was as a crew in the Gibsonia restaurant at age 16, and continued his employment with McDonald's at Penn State, where he also played football and was on the 1982 national champion team. His past leadership positions include OpNad chairman, Triad Mac Co-op president, Pittsburgh RLC chairman, Great Lakes DLC chairman, and helped found and authored the Pittsburgh Purchasing Committee's bylaws. Dan was also the Connect 2000 chairman, which brought email and the internet to the McDonald's owner-operators. He recently was credited with being a major contributor to All Day Breakfast. Dan has also had the pleasure of being chairman of the 1996 McDonald's All-American basketball game in the Civic Arena in Pittsburgh, PA. Dan has been the recipient of multiple awards from McDonald's, including the Ronald McDonald Award, Outside of McDonald's, Dan was the board of directors of Aqua Penn, which is now Dasani Water. He has had many positions with Penn State's Nittany Lion Club. He is currently on the board of trustees for Pennsylvania State University and also a member of the Mount Nittany Society and the Penn State President's Club. Turn it over to Dan.
Yeah, thank you. I had no idea what that was. Thank you. I apologize. I have to have my glasses on because I can't see very well. Couple things for those who aren't Penn State fans. You might as well just get that out of the way now, or just try to be as kind as possible. Especially if you've recently beat us in the last couple of years. Also, and then it said something about when I started working legally when I was 16 at McDonald's. I think probably when I was 8, I had my first broom in my hand. I put it in my hand a few times. So, but I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. This is neat. I've actually never been asked to speak at a Grove City event. So, somebody called me and I said absolutely. So this is fantastic. So I know you've also, if there aren't any reporters, whatever opinion I say here is not a McDonald's opinion, it's my opinion. So, in the new world, it'll say headlines tomorrow in the LA News, Dan doesn't like politics. I know you heard about myself. I moved in the area and took over this particular McDonald's almost 30 years ago. I think it was well, you have it on your hat. 1989. He has it on his hat. Took it over from the Cavelli organization. If anybody remembers that name, Sam Cavelli also owned that restaurant, and then there was the McCarthy's owned it. They were actually in the Erie area, and then my family started McDonald's down in the Pittsburgh area, and it says southwestern PA. This would be definitely the most northern corner, but even though we have restaurants up in Venango County, so I probably need to adjust that just a little bit, but thank you. Kind of how I got here, my family since 1957 has been in this business. I've kind of always wanted to do it. I'll talk a little bit about Ray Kroc later, but I met Ray Kroc. I was at my grandfather's house quite a few times. You'll hear, I'm sure some of you may have seen that movie, The Founder. I can honestly tell you that part of it's true, for sure. Ray was a fairly eccentric man. I'm energized by the fact that he didn't really start McDonald's until his 50s. He was in his 50s when he started this just enormous business now that you see on television all the time about McDonald's. So I decided to work here. I have two other brothers. My youngest brother actually owns some McDonald's down in North Carolina, and my middle brother is not in the business. We actually have way too many Delligattis in the business, so it's probably best that some of them aren't there. But I'm really appreciative that my son Nicholas is in the business now, so it is fantastic. So I decided to get in the restaurant business. I went to Penn State. I was recruited to play football there. It was funny because while I was there, I as soon as I got out of college, I wanted to jump right in. So I kept working at the McDonald's for the owner-operator's last name was Rittenhouse up there at State College. So I would be working there, and I would have a lot of my football friends come through drive-through wanting free food, which not only is an NCAA violation, which I didn't even know what an NCAA violation was at the time, but those guys would pick on me on a regular basis. I said, well, I hope this pays off because I'm getting picked up from working all the time, but it was great. And it worked out, and as a freshman, I was very fortunate we won the national championship when I was a freshman and when I was a fifth-year, two-summer bogey senior, redshirt senior at Penn State. So I really enjoyed it there. My son, actually, Nick, also played football there until he was injured. But it was, obviously, as she said, I have a fairly large Penn State University history. So an opportunity. My family sold multiple restaurants back to the McDonald's Corporation. McDonald's Corporation was growing so fast in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that they needed to fill their ranks, their executive ranks, their managerial ranks, with people that knew the business. And so right around 1980, McDonald's, Ray Kroc, actually Ed Renzi, came to my grandfather and kind of made him an offer he couldn't refuse. They wanted to buy quite a few of our restaurants in the Pittsburgh area. So they bought that, and that revenue from that put them into the Dow Jones. So that made them actually a Dow Jones company. So we went back down. We were down to not very many restaurants, and then I came on the scene, and with help from my father, we bought this McDonald's, painted it 26 different colors probably by the time I was done bulldozing it. But I moved in the area. So back then, if you were going to be a franchisee, especially a new franchisee, you had to live somewhere within 10 miles of your first restaurant. You had to be close to your first restaurant. One of the things that sets McDonald's apart from other businesses, and there are a lot of other great restaurant businesses out there, but the biggest thing that sets us apart is a lot of the other businesses, if you have the money and some minimal training, you can own these restaurants. You can write checks and just own them and then have a managerial company run them. McDonald's, it has to be your number one business. Can't have another job. You have to, work in the restaurants. It takes right now it's right around 2 to 3 years of training and working at McDonald's full time before you can become an actual owner-operator. There is such thing as Hamburger University. I know some of you may have heard of it. It's moved around a bit, but they had a very, very large Hamburger University in Oak Brook, Illinois. They've recently built a new building in downtown Chicago, and that's where Hamburger University is, where they teach managers and other executives down at that place down in Chicago. So you have to do all that, and then you get on a waiting list to find a restaurant, and sometimes that takes a long time. Back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, a lot of corporate executives that weren't real thrilled with their jobs, that had enough money to start their own business and had the wherewithal to do that kind of work, because a lot of people just don't, took the opportunity, left their executive job, start their own business so they can be pretty much their own boss. Now it's changed significantly. Now it's a lot of second generation, third generation people that work for McDonald's are buying McDonald's. A lot of old corporate executives for McDonald's are buying McDonald's now. There's not a lot of outside people coming in. I because of my relationship with Penn State University, I had quite a few friends that played professional football, and saw that the end of their career was coming and would call me and say, hey, I'm interested in this McDonald's business, because they immediately thought it was write a check, own a restaurant. And I know Franco actually had some Wendy's years ago, and it was just when he just wrote a check and he didn't really manage the restaurants. I actually have one friend of mine who played for the Browns. Any Browns fans here? Who played for the Browns. His name's Paul Farron. He played 10 years as a lineman. He came up to me. We had a mutual friend. Spent some time sitting down. I flat out explained to him that it's significant amount of work that you have to do, and he was all in. And he was really the first professional athlete that I, recommended to McDonald's. He now has like 28 McDonald's in Boston. So he's been extremely successful. He's been 20 years now with McDonald's and his family. So it is an interesting business from ground up. Just to give you a little, I'll just give you a little bit of McDonald's history. 1940 in California, there was this car hop drive-in craze that was going on, where restaurants were popping up all over the California area so people can drive their cars back all around and get their milkshakes and burgers. And the McDonald's brothers had 2 restaurants. They were doing very well. In the early 1950s, Ray Kroc sold a thing called a multi-mixer, which is basically the spindles that do shakes. You spindle a shake. Multi-mixers was a bank of like 6 of them. Some of them were a bank of 9 of them. So there was quite a few of them. And that's what Ray did for a living. He did a bunch of other things for a living. He sold paper goods to restaurants. But his big thing was he started selling these multi-mixers. He got this enormous order for these multi-mixers from these McDonald's brothers. So he had to go out and check it out. So Ray went out there, fell in love with what was going on, the excitement, the growth, the opportunities that, he was one of those go-get guys. He's the first guy to squirt down the parking lot or take the garbage out. He was a really hard worker. He got involved with the McDonald's brothers, became a franchisor for that business because he wanted to work with them and expand the business. Ended up buying the company from them. I think in the book they said he bought it for peanuts. Well, back then he paid around $2.7 million for him. That was enormous amount of money for 2 restaurants back then. Was just crazy amount of money. And he got beat up, I think, a little bit, but it's a movie. There's a little drama in it, like anything else. But he got involved, and things started really, really kicking. One of the things Ray did is he really did a good job running the restaurants. He had a great operations manual that he put together. The one thing Ray had a hard time doing is how they were going to make money in the business. A lot of people don't know this, but McDonald's is really a real estate business. McDonald's is a real estate and franchisor for the most part. They buy the real estate, and you pay, as an owner, people that operate them pay them rent based on how much business they do. And let's say, they've owned this piece of property here for 40 years now. That's how they make their money, by you paying them every month based on sales. And between inflation and more people moving in the area, that's how they're making their money. So it's much more of a real estate marketing business than necessarily a restaurant business. It's guys like me and the franchisees that make up that part of the business. So the interesting, and then back to my family and how they got in. My grandfather was a sergeant in the Army. He was in the European theater in World War II. Comes back after World War II. Like many veterans coming back, trying to find how he's going to fit in life. He was living in California for a while. He did see that car that wasn't out here, that wasn't out this way on the East Coast that much. He saw that, came back to Pittsburgh, where his original family's from the Uniontown area, and his original family's from the Fairmont, West Virginia area. Came back. My grandfather was really good at numbers. He was a math guy. He got a few people together and they invested. And how he originally got at McDonald's is he went to Chicago. Chicago's known for probably the most famous. They have a restaurant show in Chicago where people showcase all their different kind of restaurants. He met Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc was at a table like this with pamphlets, trying to sell McDonald's, and they hit it off from day one. This was 1954. Ray put down. It changed significantly the deal, but Ray put down a map, and they're trying to figure out the area, and he literally put a point in the middle of Pittsburgh and did a 100-mile radius from Pittsburgh. I'm hoping. I kind of wish that was how the original deal went, because that if you by the way a bird flies, 100 miles from Pittsburgh is a whole heck of a lot of ground. So, but it didn't turn out that way. We ended up doing a deal with the Sweeney family. If anybody knows any of the Sweeneys, but they actually own some restaurants in Lawrence and Beaver County, and in some in Butler County. We had a few, I think it was 6 or 7 counties in the Pittsburgh areas where we started, and we had this first right of refusal. And we started the very first McDonald's on McKnight Road. First one in Pennsylvania was on McKnight Road. If anybody knows the 2 McDonald's that are on McKnight Road, it was the one where next to the old movie theater, which that's not there either. That McDonald's was the original, they called them red and whites with the arches. They were just a walk-up restaurant. And since then, that McDonald's has transformed, and there's another one that's transformed multiple times. The second one was in Bellevue. It was a red and white that got tore down. The new mansard roof, which had the overhangs like McDonald's that we had up here. And now we have this the new style that we've just built at McDonald's here in Grove City. That store has been rebuilt, I think at least 4 times, the one down there in McKnight Road. They do a lot of, we don't own that restaurant anymore, but they do an incredible amount of business. But that's how that got started. So one of the things, well, just real quick, another thing is one of our strategic partners is Coca-Cola. A guy named Waddy Pratt been with Coca-Cola for a few years, met Ray Kroc, handshake deal. Coca-Cola became our big marketing / soda supplier, and it was based on a handshake deal. I don't, maybe recently, 5-6 years ago, but up till then it was always a handshake agreement. There was never a big contract with Coca-Cola. I found that interesting. So it's just a couple other things. The first menu, I'm sure some of you may have seen this. All we had was hamburgers, shakes, fries, Coke, root beer, coffee, orange drink, which has changed a little bit over the years, and milk. That's all we had. Now we have, so some of the folks that work there, too many. It's just way too many. It makes it difficult even to operate, but we have quite a few. And one of the big things that we participate in as owner-operators is our big participation is innovate. We've done a lot of innovation. My family has been credited with the first owner-operators to start selling breakfast. So we started selling breakfast in downtown Pittsburgh, but it was not at all like it is now. We had short order cooks. We started making griddle cakes, hot cakes, eggs, bacon, toast. And that's how we started it. And I'll come up with another guy who came up with the Egg McMuffin. But another thing that happens, a guy named Lou Groen from Cincinnati created the fillet of fish. He was an owner-operator, just like my grandfather. Had an enormous Catholic population in the area where he owned his restaurants, and said, we have to sell fish because the churches are killing us. And he started selling fish. So it turned out to be, fillet of fish it's still one of my favorite sandwiches. Well, my grandfather's passed on, but he'd still be mad if I think I said that. In 1968, my grandfather developed the Big Mac. He was at the Uniontown McDonald's. He had a few people that worked with him, including my dad. They needed there were some other restaurants in the area that were starting to sell double hamburgers, larger versions of the American appetite, how big it's gotten, and I certainly participated in that. But he developed the Big Mac. There was quite a few stories about what it was originally called. Don't believe it. From day one, it was always called the Big Mac. It's amazing. I actually looked it up on the internet the other day, and there's actually people saying that, well, it was originally called this, originally called that. It was always from day one. It's going to be the Big Mac. So, and goodness knows that there's a lot of Big Macs sold all the time. Another thing that's happened is over the years, in 1974, we started Ronald McDonald House in Philadelphia. there was a guy who played for the Eagles, Fred Hill, had a daughter that was ill, and noticed that. And I don't know if anybody here has had an opportunity to spend any time or know anything about Ronald McDonald House, but if you live far away from Children's Hospital in any city, and we have quite a few of them around the country, Ronald McDonald House is a place for family to live while their children are in the hospital, and usually with some very terrible illnesses and sicknesses. And surgeries that they have to go through, and it's extremely expensive to try to live in a hotel or rent a house or whatever it might do. So it's been a big partner of ours for many years. A couple years after that, my grandfather founded the one in Pittsburgh. We've had 3 of them. Now we have a big high-rise that we bought right next to Ron McDonald House bought right next to Children's Hospital, so it's we have our hallways go in and out of there. Very easy to get to, and there's Ron McDonald's houses in 64 countries. In 1983, we had chicken nuggets. No one invented chicken nuggets; it just happened. The other interesting thing in 1990, I want to say. We as McDonald's, we had a little bit to do with the wall falling down. We started at McDonald's, well, a little before that, but we started McDonald's USSR in 1990. It was the first U.S. company to go in there. The interesting thing about, and it was an enormous success. The interesting about it is a Big Mac. The cost of a Big Mac was about 3 days' wages back then, and they were out the door, and still out the door. It's one of the busiest restaurants in the world, still. The interesting thing about how McDonald's did that, obviously they had to negotiate. They built enormous distribution centers in Russia. They had to plant potato fields. So, we wanted to make it as close, or if not exactly the same, as if you would go down to McMahon Road or Grove City McDonald's or whatever it might be. So they had to build this entire enormous infrastructure just for this one restaurant, which that one restaurant probably does as much business as 10 of my restaurants. So it's a big deal. And the other interesting about it is that was back when it was rubles. And you couldn't trade rubles in for any other currency. Rubles was not something you could trade for U.S. dollars. So what McDonald's would have to do is they would have to take the rubles, and then they have to go buy tomatoes or vodka or whatever else that you can export out of Russia. So they would go buy that, and then they would sell that across the country line so that they can put it into a currency that paid the bills. So it was really there's actually there's a whole book on that particular venture that McDonald's did. In 1993, the first McCafe opened up. I know a lot of you see that we sell lots and lots and lots of coffee. I don't know if you've heard of. There's this company called Starbucks out there. Coffee is obviously is an enormous American thing, and one of our ways to battle it, at least to keep up with it, even though ours is at least half the price, if not a third of the price. And I listen. If you like Starbucks, God bless you, but paying $5, $6 for a cup of coffee just I can't. But my sister-in-law does it all the time. So. 1995, McFlurries were invented by an operator in Canada. It goes on and on and on and on and on. So at the end of the day, McDonald's, we're in 120 countries. That changes from time to time. If there's a coup somewhere, we have to pull out. We go in, pull out. We sell some work, some don't work. We've actually, some people say McDonald's never closes. We've had, there's one on Banksville Road, everybody's familiar with it, on 19 down in Pittsburgh. they put up, turned into a one-way road. Didn't get two-way access. They had to close the restaurant. It was, millions of dollars worth of lost income, but unfortunately, that's what happens sometimes. So, I'm obviously going to open things up for questions, but one of the things everybody asks me, does my family get a piece of every Big Mac that's sold? That is not true. Somebody was in the Ducky tour the other day, comes back and says, hey, I hear you get a quarter for every Big Mac that was sold. We sell something like 50 million Big Macs a year. No, not a year. A day.
Yeah.
I think I could. I'd be okay. I think I would be fine. But I'm going to see if I got through my list of things I wanted to. I think so. But I'm be happy to ask any question. I'm sorry I rambled a little bit. I get a little excited about our business and what we do. But
I have a question for you. You said McDonald's is really a real estate company.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean when you knock that one up here down, if you wanted to go someplace else in Grove City,
mm-hmm.
you couldn't do that?
Only with permission with McDonald's, but they would go buy it. One of the things that I if you know the medicine shop that was next door, I actually purchased that, knowing that I was going to need a little more. We were going to need a little more property because that the old McDonald's had a basement in it, so there's all that square footage in the basement. All the new McDonald's are being built on slabs, and because they're a lot safer, and you're not carrying. I can remember I'm carrying all that stuff out of the freezer downstairs. So it's changed a lot, but so I did that. The bad thing about that, and the interesting about that is I buy that for. I have to really look in the future for that because McDonald's won't pay you. Well, they will pay you what you paid for it, but that just goes back to your rent. So I would end up having to pay for it one way or the other. So it's an interesting business model, but it certainly works for sure. And if somebody, let's say you're building a brand new restaurant now, and some of you have seen how Sheetz is building these. just securing these AAA locations. We're talking about $1-2 million for a piece of property. If that was McDonald's, and it is in many cases, McDonald's will do the same thing. The cost to operate the businesses is nearly double what my real estate costs would be. So, yeah, it's interesting. Yes.
Do you feel McDonald's is a good investment as a stock at this point in time?
Well, I wish you would ask me about 3 years ago, because it really was about 3 years ago. I obviously am not here to give investment advice, but McDonald's is always been, they'll have their 1 or 2 year hiccups, but over the years it's been an incredible investment. Just about every single investment company has enormous amounts of McDonald's stock part of their portfolio. It is part of the Dow Jones, so it is an indicator of how the U.S. does business.
So do you have a live nickel versus the dead quarter?
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? No, I wish I did. I didn't want to put all my eggs in the same basket. If I would have, trust me, I'd be in a much better position, I think.
Okay,
But I put my eggs in getting my kids to school, I guess.
See that clock over there? That was in the McDonald's building when it was a school.
Oh, what? Oh, was that the old school?
Yeah.
In the old school?
Yeah. Yeah, I went to work for the Grove City School District in 1954, and I saw that clock, and I asked the superintendent whenever McDonald's bought it if he wanted to sell that clock. He saw a little bit and he said, if you want that clock, you just take it.
Yeah, we were just talking about, I had a lot of things on the walls and a few things, they were taken. So I put my son in charge of that, and apparently got out of control.
School district 32 years as a maintenance.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of history at that. I mean, if any, some of you that have been in Grove City a very long time, when the McCartneys owned it, there was basically a motorcycle gang lived next door, and he ended up having, eventually it got really out of control to a point where he had to buy the house and tear it down because it was a little bit of a hazard over the years, and that actually ended up being the medicine shop and the country fair. So, yes.
I miss big inflatable Christmas inflatables they had on the roof for a couple
Yeah.
years.
That was fun. Yeah, that was crazy expensive, but it was a lot of fun. Yeah. No, I wish I had the funds to do that again. That was. We still do it at one restaurant. We have a Big Mac museum at the Irwin McDonald's. It's not as crazy as I did here, but it's pretty close.
Okay, 2 questions. One, they're not related.
Okay.
First one was, did the Crocs have children? And if they did they go into the business as well?
From what I remember, I think there were 2 daughters in the family. None of them got into the business. Ray had 3 different wives over the years.
Okay.
His last wife, Joan, inherited considerable amount of business and actually gave nearly all of it. Well, I'm sure she left $100 million for herself, but over $1 billion she left for the Salvation Army.
Whenever McDonald's, or the school was there, that was a high school
Yeah,
to
right.
start with.
Yeah.
And Clark had a in there that for a change of class.
Oh, that was the change of class. That's
Yeah, I took the tape out. I wish I left it in there.
what was the other question?
The second question was, if you had to speak on the idea of, from your family being so long in business and having experienced so many different things throughout the whole time, what would you say are some of the most valuable lessons you could say would be to have endurance over time?
Well, one of the things is, that's a bit of a loaded question, but it's a really good question. One of the things is patience. We over McDonald's, we've certainly had our ups and downs, and there have been many times when I've seen owner-operators that were, during difficult times, put their hands up and say, you know what, I can't do this anymore, sell their business, and then 2 years later our business was just better than ever. The other big thing is, like any business, bar business, you have to be physically around, and that's a big change from our business. We don't just buy them and walk away. Physically around. Thank goodness my son's in the business now, because he's another pair of eyes and ears for me. I have an uncle in the business. My grandfather was, until he was almost 100, was still wanting to know what the heck was going on. If you got a bad cheeseburger at the Harmerville McDonald's, I would hear about it about 12 seconds later. So you just, you have to stay on it. I mean, this is a difficult. We're, and I'm sure a lot of you, it's not a surprise to a lot of you. The millennials, the younger kids these days have it's a different time. It certainly is a different time to be an employer. I am so fortunate with the employees that I have. I have a couple of people that have been working up at this McDonald's for 30 plus years. I have a maintenance man who works in my Greensburg McDonald's, has been there for 50 years. I keep kidding that I thought he was like in the witness relocation program. He's very quiet, just works all the time. I have my office secretary has just had her 50th anniversary with us. Most of my supervisors have been with us for 40 years. I have multiple folks in the 90s still working at Irwin at some of the restaurants. We have many special needs folks working for us that have been fantastic. So but you have to stay on top of it for sure. So
like to tell you a pet name that we know McDonald's by, at least in our family.
Okay.
Mickey D's.
Mickey D's.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
We have a grandson that worked McDonald's in summers in his college career.
Good. That's great. I did that and it never stopped.
I just wanted to say, Dan, thanks, for the opportunities that you did give me through the 18 years. I started when I was 15. I just recently quit in 2017.
Right.
But a great company to work for.
Thank you.
I mean, I went for a little bit more money, but different change. But very many opportunities. Going through the ranks, becoming a manager. So.
Yeah. Glad he said that. It kind of segues into, if you have any sons or grandsons or great-grandsons that would like to work, I'm more than happy to take good care of them and give them a job. So just have them fill out an application.
Excuse me, I also work for McDonald's, and like Dan said, they do move up from the ranks, and I do like that, because I've seen Nick go from crew, then he moves up to management, then office, then now you said he's an owner-operator, so they do learn what everybody else learns at the ground level.
Right.
They all start out the same. Now they progress faster, but they start out, and then there's always opportunity if you want to move up, talk, work, do your thing. There's, to opportunities for people to move up. And I don't know, this is a little thing to some people, but some companies don't even give even a small incentive at Christmas time. Dan shows appreciations with whether it's candies, cookies, something he gives every employee. Now multiply that by how many stores and how many employees. That's a good chunk of money, but some people don't see it that way. So a lot of stores don't do that, and you can, opt in 401k and health plan, and people think they see on TV, McDonald's workers want $15 an hour and they don't get treated right in that. It depends on your owner or operator, and I'm telling you, the Delligattis are good owner operators.
Well, thank you very much. That was very nice. I appreciate that. I thank you for that. And I promise you, not everybody has as great as experience. It does from time to time it's not an easy business. Anybody's in any restaurant business. It's very difficult business to run. It's getting more and more difficult than ever.
Well,
we're doing our best.
difficulty because, like you said, it's a different thing. The kids don't want to work. They're on their sofa, so that makes it hard on the ones that do work. So I mean, it's not necessarily the company. It's the people in the company that, like you say, they come and go. So you got to have endurance. Like, hey, that person let them do what they want. They're not going to be here next week anyway. So it's the endurance of your people and the willingness to train other people.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Dan, what company, like restaurant company like McDonald's, is your closest competitor?
Probably should tell you this. I'll tell you what it used to be. It used to be Burger King and Wendy's.
Yeah.
But now it's being more. It's actually more like Sheetz.
Oh, Sheetz.
Whoa. Yeah.
Well, my grandson loves their hamburgers.
That's what I was going to ask you, what she brought up. The Big Mac came about because other small companies, competitive
Yeah.
were offering a double patty burgers. So your dad or your grandfather came up with, okay, let's also offer, you could try it. Now, let me ask something. So you put something out as a test run,
Mm-hmm.
and like how long do you give it to see? And in different areas, certain things are different. Like you mentioned, Russia, certain things they'll do 3 times as much. And I know that's another little question, but like let's say that you come up with something. Do you have to get corporate approval to?
Yeah, and back then it was a lot easier. You can just kind of just do it, and then you bring the corporate people in, and
say
they
this
look
is
at it,
working.
and they say, well, go ahead and put it in all your restaurants, and then you test it. And I mean, Big Macs when they first came out were 45 cents. But it turned out, I mean, it's truly turned out to be a big hit. Trust me, we've had, I mean, one of Ray's favorite, we had the Makula burger, which had a piece of pineapple in it. Not a big hitter. We had the clam dory, where we had a little, it was basically clams and tartar sauce. We had the McLean. Everybody remembers the McLean had a, Patty actually had, carrageen, I guess it's called, which is basically seaweed. Because it was a lower fat, and that's, you're going to see a lot of that coming up with all the new vegetarian burgers. We've had lots of products, and it's different. We sell bagels is big up north. We sell a lot more muffins than we do biscuits. Down south, it's all biscuits. And there's definitely, we started selling. A lot of people basically got turned on to sweet tea from drinking at McDonald's, because if you were south of Pennsylvania, that's all they sold was sweet tea. We were saying, there's no way people are going to drink sweet tea.
And you mentioned ideas, and you mentioned the pineapple. Well, you've got Hawaii. I don't know how many McDonald's are in Hawaii, but have you ever considered a spam burger?
Yeah.
Pineapple?
Yeah, and I think spam. I think
Hawaii.
it's great. What's it in Philadelphia? But it's like grits. It's
Philly.
What's something like that. I can't remember.
So you'll go to different burger places in the country, and you'll maybe see something
try it out,
different, and so you'll experience it.
Yeah, we do it a lot. We do it all the time. If somebody's doing something new.
Who wrote the jingle?
2 all beef patties, sausage, cheese, pickles, onions, sesame seed bun. One of the creators of that was a guy named Jack Goldsmith from Pittsburgh. Yeah, his company Simon Marketing was the ones that came up with that, which is now.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. We were just at the Irwin McDonald's.
Oh, there you
I
go.
always take this picture by the Big Macs, because the Big Mac's about as tall as the ceiling.
Yeah.
If anyone has not been there, they have a museum there with all the Big Mac things, and it's really interesting to look at. So, and one favor, don't get rid of the golden arches outside.
Yeah, I don't like it. I think I don't expect that happening soon, but it'll look. Sometimes at times it looks different.
Because I like to see the old arch built, the golden arches outside.
Yeah. Well, the one at Irwin, I don't want that to change. That's one of a kind. Those giant.
Is that one of your?
Yeah. So thank you.
What do they do with the arches when they do away with them? As a historic society, like we have a G.C. Murphy's thing, we had one of those down in our
Where would we
basement.
put those golden
Well, I tell you what you would want to have. The old Speedy, they used to call the Speedy Drive, the old Speedy sign. It was a neon sign in front of the old red and whites. That would be something to have. I wish we would have kept one of those.
There's one in Sebastian, Florida.
Yeah. There's not too many of them out there, and they actually literally just bulldozed the very first Ray Kroc McDonald's was in Des Plaines, Illinois, and Illinois. I have a friend of mine that says Illinois, and Illinois, and they tore it down. It's a shame. So take over.
It's Todd Blackledge, the quarterback. When you
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine.
All right, that's what I thought. Todd.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. I have to say, I've heard that rumor that you get a cut on every Big Mac.
I have a helicopter pad in front of my house.
And so I'm glad you put that to rest. We have refreshments over there. Any of you that are new to the Historical Society, I encourage you, if you are interested in looking around, we have many volunteers here that they could show you around the building. And I also would encourage you to take a newsletter as you leave, and you can read a little bit about us. And also, we have a donation bowl out there. We are completely nonprofit, and we exist only on donations and memberships. So any amount that is greatly appreciated. But thank you again, Dan.
Thank you. Yeah,